Yo som Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Swakhado Yenam Bhagavata Dhammo Supatipanno Yasam Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅgho Tamayam Bhagavantang Sadhammang Sasaṅghang Ime Hisakare Hiyathārahang Aropite Hiyabhipujayama Sadhu no Bhante Bhagava Suchira Parinibbuttopi Pachima Janata Nukampamanasa Ime Sakare Dugata Panna Karabhute Patiganhatu Amha Kandi Gharatang Hitaya Sukhaya Arahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantang Abhivademi Swakhato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅgho Saṅghang Namami Annamayang Buddhassa Bhagavato Pubbabhaganamakarang Karomase Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Annamayang Buddhanusatena yang karomase Tangho bana bhagavantang evang kalayano kiti sado apugato iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho Vijjacarana sampanno sugato lokavidu Anuttaro purisa dhammasarati sat manusanam buddho bhagavate Annamayang buddham viggitiṃ karomase Buddhavarahanta varata diguna biyuto Suna viñana karuna hisamagatato Bodhe siyo sujanatang kamaram vasuro Vandamahang tamaranang sirasa jinendang Buddho yo sambhapaninang saranang khemamutamang Pathamanusati thanang vandamitang sirenahang Buddha sahasamida soa Buddho me samikisaro Buddho dunga saghata cha vidata cha hitasame Sahang niyademi sariran chivitan chidang Vandanto hang charisami Buddha sewa subodhitang Nati me saranang anyang Buddho me saranang varang Etena sacha vajena vadayang sadhu sasane Buddha me vandamanena yam punyam pasutang ida Sabbe biyantaraya me mahe sukta sate jasam Kaina vacaya vacetasa va Buddhe kukamam bhagatam mayayam Buddho patiganhatu acayantang Kalantare samvaritum va buddhe Annamayang dhammanusatina yang karoma se Swakhato bhagavata dhammo Sandetiko akaliko ehipasiko Opanaiko pachatam vedita bhovinyo hite Annamayang dhamma bhikkhiting karoma se Tadadhadi gunayo gavase nasayo Yo magapa kapariyati vimokha vedo Dhammo kulo kapatana tathadhari dhari Vandamahang tamaharam varathammametang Dhammo yo sambhapaninang saranang kemamutamang Dutiyanusate thanam vandamitang sirenahang Dhamma sahasamida va Dhammo me samikisaro Dhammo duga saghata ca vidhata ca hitasame Dhamma sahang niyademi sarirang jivitang jidhang Vandanto hang charisami Dhamma seva sudhammatang Nati me saranang anyang Dhammo me saranang varang Sacha vajena vadayang sadhu sasane Dhamma me vandamanena yang punyam pasutang ida Sabbe biyantaraya me mae sukta sate jasa Aena vacaya vacetasa va Dhamme kukamam bhagatam mayayam Dhammo patiganhatu acayantang Kalantare samvaritum vadhamme Annamayang Saṅghānusatina yang karoma se Supatipanno bhagavato sāvaka saṅgho Uccupatipanno bhagavato sāvaka saṅgho Nyāyapatipanno bhagavato sāvaka saṅgho Samicipatipanno bhagavato sāvaka saṅgho Yadidang cattari purisa yugani atha purisa pugala Esa bhagavato sāvaka saṅgho Ahunayo pahunayo Dakkhinayo Anjali Karaniyo Anuttaram Punya Khetang Lokasati Annamayang Sangham Vigiting Karoma Se Majo Supatipati Guna Viyuto Yodha Pido Ariya Pugala Sangha Seto Sila De Dhamma Pavara Sayakaya Cito Vanda Mahang Tamariya Naganang Susudhang Sanghoyo Sambhapaninang Saranang Kemamutamang Tadayanu Vandamitang Sirenahang Sangha Sahasamida Sova Sangho Me Samikisaro Sangho Dukha Saghata Chavidhata Chahita Same Sangha Sahang Niyademi Sariran Chivitang Chidang Vandanto Hang Charisami Sangha Sobhatipanatang Nati me saranang anyang sangho me saranang varang etena sachavajena vadayang satu sasane me vandamanena yam punyam pasutang ida Sabe piyantaraya me maesu dasade dasa kaina vacaya vacetasa va sanghe kukamam bhagatam mayayang sangho patiganhatu vacayantang kalantare samvaritum va sanghe. Page number 120. Anatta Lakkhana Sutta. Evam me sutang ekang samayam bhagava varanasiyam viharati isipatan migadai Tandrako bhagava panchavangiyem bhikkhu amante siddha Bhikkhave anatta rupang chahidam bhikkhave atta abhavisanaidang rupa abandhaya samvataya lambeta charupe evam me rupa Hotu evam me rupam ma ahositi yasma chako bhik rupang anatta tasma rupang abandhaya samvatati nachalambati rupe evam me rupang hotu evam me Rupang ma ahositi vedana anatta Chahidam bhikkhave atta abhavisanaidam vedana abadhaya sang Teyala betha cha vedanaya evam me vedana hotu evam me vedana ma ahositi yasma chakom Vedana anatta tasma vedana abadhaya samvatati na chalabhati vedana evam me vedana hotu evam me vedana ma ahositi sanya anatta sanya chahidam Atta abhavi sanaidang sanya abadhaya samvataya labeta cha sanya evam me sanya hotu evam me sanya ma ahositi yasma chakho bhikkhave sanya Anatta tasma sanya abadhaya samvatati na chalabhati sanya evam me sanya hotu evam me sanya ma Ti saṅghāra anatta saṅghāra chahidam bhikkhave atta abhavi samsunaidam saṅghāra abandhaya samvatteyung labeta ca saṅghāresu Vamme saṅghāra hontu evamme Saṅghārāma ahe sunti yasma cakho bhikkhave saṅghāra anatta tasma saṅghāra abandhaya samvatanti na chalabhati saṅghāre su evam me saṅghāra hontu evam me Saṅghārāma ahe sunti viññānaṁ anatta viññānaṁ chahidam bhikkhave atta abhavisanaidam viññānaṁ abadhaya samvataya Jnane evam me viññānaṁ hotu evam me viññānaṁ ma ahositi yasma cakho bhikkhave viññānaṁ anatta tasma viññānaṁ abandhaya samvatati na chalabhati viññāne evam me viññānaṁ ma ahositi taṁ kimmanyatha bhikkhave rupa niccam va aniccaṁ vati aniccaṁ bhante yam pananiccam dukkhaṁ vataṁ sukhaṁ vati dukkhaṁ bhante yam pananiccam dukkhaṁ Viparinama dhammang kalanutang samanupassitu etang mama eso hamasami eso me attatino hetam bhante tang kinmanyatha bhikkhave vedana anicca va anicca vati anicca bhante Yam pananiccang dukkhaṁ vataṁ sukhaṁ vati dukkhaṁ bhan Yam pananiccang dukkhaṁ viparinama dhammang kalang nutang samanupassitung etang mama eso hamasami eso me attatino hetang bhante tang kinmanyatha bhikkhave sanya nicca va anicca vati anicca bhan yam pananicca khang va tăng sukhang va ti dukkhaṃ bhan Niccang dukkhaṃ viparinama dhammang kalanutang samanupassitum etang mama eso hamasmi eso me attatino hetang bhante tang kinmanyatha bhikkhave saṅghāra Nicca va anicca vati anicca bhante yam pananiccang dukkhang vatang sukhang vati duk bhante yam pananiccang dukkhang viparinama dhammang kalanutang samanupassitum Etang mama eso hamasami eso me attatino hetang bhante tangkin manyatha bhikkhave viññāna niccang va aniccang vati aniccang bhante yang pananiccang dukkhang vatang sukhang vati duk Bhante yam panani chang nama dhammang kalanutang samanupassitung etang mama eso hamasmi eso me attatino hetang bhante Tasmatiha bhikkhave yang kinchirupa atitana gatapachupanna ajatam va bahindava olarikam va sukhumang va hinam va panitam va yandure santike va sabang rupa Neta mamane so hamasamina me so attati eva meta yatha bhutang sammapanyaya dathabba yakachi vedana atitana gatapachupanna ajatava bahindhava Olarikava Sukhumava Hinava Panitava Yadure Santikeva Samba Vedana Netam Mamane So Hamasamina Meso Attati Eva Metam Sammapanyaya dathambang yakaci sanya atitana gatapachupanna ajatawa bahindhawa olarikawa sukhumawa hinawa panitawa yadure santikewa Sabba sanya netam mamane so hamasamina me so attati eva metam yatha bhuta sammapanyaya dathamba ye kechi saṅghāra atitana gatapachupanna ajatava bahindhava Olarikava Sukhumava Hinava Panitava Yadure Santikeva Sabbes Netam mamane so hamasamina me so attati eva meta yatha bhutang sammapanyaya datham Yang kinci viññānaṃ atitana gatapachupanna ajataṃ va bahindhava olarikam va sukhumam va hinam va panitam va Yandure santi kewa sabang vinyana netam mamane so hamasamina so attati eva meta yatha bhutang sammapanyaya dathambang evam passam bhikkhave sutta ariya savako rupasming pinim bindati vedanaya pinim bindati sanyaya pinim Saṅghārestu pinim bindati viññānasming pinim bindati nimbidang virajati virag vimucati vimutasming vimutang iti ñānang hoti khinajati usita brahmacaryang katang karaniyang naparang itathayati pajang idamavocam bhagava attamana pancavagiya bhikkhu bhagavato bhasitang abhinandung imasamin chapanavai karanasming bhanyamane pancavagiyanang bhikkhuna anupadaya asavehi cittani vimucing suti anatta lakkhana sutang nitthitang. Page 31. 31 verses of sharing and aspiration. Now let us chant the verses of sharing and aspiration. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of them. May those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless through the goodness that arises from my practice. And through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease and all harmful states of mind until I realize Nibbana in every kind of birth. May I have an upright mind with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge, unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble guide. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled. So we will sit for half an hour.
Imagina falando, bora sair. Demônio.
นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิอิโทปะรังสักกะจังธัมโมโสทโพติ like to ask permission from the Sangha and the laity. You can do the formal request. Okay. Brahma Chelokadipati Sampati Patanjali Andivaram Mayachat Santid Satta Parajjakha Jatika Dese Sudhammam Anukampimam Padam. Thank you. This is more beautiful with the former request. So I repeat my homage to the Triple Gem. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami ito parang sakacang dhammo sota poti. Like to ask permission from the Bhikkhu Sangha, Theras, Anutheras, and from the Upasakas, Upasikas, and also send my regards to the Zoom community listening from far. So this evening is the second Dhamma talk in the in the group of 3 talks I wanted to offer. But the second discourse that the Buddha gave, the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, the sutta about the characteristics of no self. And yesterday we talked about the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, with the emphasis being on suffering or dukkha, arising because of craving and ceasing when we let go, and eventually being supported by the Noble Eightfold Path, that the practice leads to freedom from suffering, freedom from dukkha. So yesterday's talk about the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta was referring to very practical things that anybody can feel and experience: craving and the cessation of craving, and the freedom that arises from that when we are at peace, because we are not investing anything extra into a situation. We just basically take things as they are and use the opportunity to see directly when there are things that are unpleasant, what causes the unpleasantness, and not evade them, and not run away from dukkha, but rather transcend dukkha by knowing its characteristics. And the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta ends with Venerable Anya Kondanya attaining to the Dhammacakku, having realized the fruit of stream entry. And after the sutta, it's given the the truth that he sees when reflecting on the teachings of the Buddha is that whatever has the nature to arise also has the nature to cease. Yang kinchi samudaya dhammang sapantang nirodha dhammanti. So this is already a hint towards the next topic, the impermanence of things. And this is one of the big themes of the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, and the characteristics of non-self. The 5 disciples of the Buddha were, after the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta was given, were still with the Buddha, and they took turns going on alms round and getting instructions by the Lord Buddha. And gradually, they attained, all of the 5 attained to the Dhammacakko, to the fruit of Sotapanna, of the entering the stream of the Dhamma. And when the Buddha then expounds the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta while being in the deer park in Sarnath, in Varanasi, close to Varanasi, then we can already note that also the listeners to this sutta are already highly attained people that have seen the Dhamma, people have realized the preliminary attainment of entering the stream. I believe that entering the stream is similar to being very firm in the Dhamma, being very clear about the aims of the Dhamma, and knowing very clearly what needs to be done in the future in the practice, but still not having finished the work of attaining to the full awakening, and not fully understanding the Four Noble Truths, not fully fulfilling the Noble Eightfold Path, but knowing the path, knowing where to go, which direction, having right view on the level of knowing that the Four Noble Truths are the things that the understanding of the Four Noble Truths will lead to liberation. So the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, the Buddha gives to his companions in practicing the hardships first, and then when he met them in the deer park in Sarnath, then the first listeners to his first Dhamma talk. So the second Dhamma talk expounds more on a very broad level, I would say, about the interplay between the sense of ourselves being a permanent entity, or being some kind of thing in itself, and the facts about nature, that everything is always changing. So the Buddha refers to the sense of self by showing that actually what we think is a self is not permanent. And if something is not permanent, if it keeps changing, how can we hold on to it and say, this is it, this is the essence, this is who I really am, and this is my self, this am I. And we have just chanted in Pali, and the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta is given in a dialogue form. Buddha asks the 5 disciples, is this form, the physical form, for example, is this permanent or impermanent? And they say, well, it's changing, it's impermanent. And then if it's not permanent, then how can we say it's not prone to dukkha? Well, because what is if something is impermanent, would that be dukkha, or would that be happiness or sukha? And then the 5 ascetics answer, well, it is dukkha, because it's not stable. So these are already very interesting thoughts that we should digest and keep in mind, and we need to again, like the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, keep the sutta in mind and keep the teachings in mind and apply them to the situations, various situations that we are passing. And many times we do exactly the opposite. Rather than seeing things as impermanent, we see them as a stable thing. And then later, when they do change, we get disappointed, we get frustrated, and we experience dukkha, just in line as how it's outlined in the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta. The tendency to hold on to things because one feels like this is the way it should be, this is like the way I want them to be, is like the craving of wanting things to be, wishing them to be in a certain way. And we're in a way in so many areas working against nature when we want nature to be otherwise than it is. And in fact, we cannot really pin it down to what the situation is, because it always changes. It's always like different already when we think about it and when we have reviewed it. We can think of our own life, for example, all our existence. We are constantly prone to different impacts of things changing, factors changing, even the body is changing. And when we think about like as a whole concept of this is Kevali Bhikkhu or my lay name Henning, if I think about this, basically, I can really say in many ways, I'm not the same as Henning, who was studying in Berlin 30 years ago, cycling up and down congested streets of a big, busy city. And also my whole thoughts about life and my whole way of looking at what is happening was, I would say, very different than what it is right now. Similar to when we have learned something, when we know something more than before, then we have more or less already overcome a certain amount of ignorance. We're not oblivious of certain answers anymore when we've solved a certain riddle, and we cannot undo this. We cannot go back to that state of our mind before we've solved a certain question. Similarly, like when we're here now practicing, actually we've already changed so much in the whole way of being as a human being in this whole round of samsara. We have already changed so much that even mentally we are not the same as before when we haven't practiced yet. So the Buddha then differentiates between the various aspects of what we call ourselves. We say, yes, this is like a male human being called Kevali or Henning, and you've got your own names, you've got your own history, and yet the external appearance and the way we call it is just one aspect of it. And we all know that the Buddha singled out 5 different factors that make up our life. We can say, the form, the body, like rupang, the external form, which we already know very well. It's aging. It's not a small child anymore, and many of you have got gray hair already. We're not a spring chicken anymore. We're not jumping around up and down the hill like we used to. We may have memories of that, but still, our body is very, very different already, and it's not the same. And then the feelings that we experience. This is in the momentary perception of who we are. Many times we are bound up with the impressions of whether we are experiencing happy feelings or unhappy feelings, or painful feelings or pleasant feelings. Or sometimes also we can expand to having neither painful nor unpainful feelings. We can also see that the change between those three aspects of what we feel, what the nervous system tells our body, whether pain or not pain, is always changing. And once we've overcome a certain sense of pain and experience of pain, this is gone. Say, just imagine you were stung by a bee and this afternoon, or a wasp, and imagine the pain. It's a thing of the past, and it's not, in the moment that we reflect upon it, it's not a factor of our existence anymore. So to constantly look at the experience of feeling is a very good practice to get into the more dynamic way of seeing our lives, and making note of a feeling that arises and then stays for a while and then ceases, and being very detached from the understanding that what we felt yesterday is still a reality of today. That would be quite silly. Some people do hold on to and the experience that they make, but actually, if we really look at whether we're feeling hot or cold, or pleasant or unpleasant, it's constantly changing. And as practitioners, this is one of the things that we really use as a method to become peaceful, is not to compare and not to anticipate feelings, not to hold on to certain impressions that the nervous system leaves on our awareness, but to always stay in the middle, in the present moment. We're breaking the identification of suffering as painful feelings by staying in the present. And sometimes this can really happen, that we're actually sitting and first we feel some unpleasant sensation. For example, we feel that there's a lot of insects landing on our arms and possibly stinging us, like mosquitoes, or like we feel that it's very cold and it's windy, for example, when we're sitting outside. But then we make an effort to be in the present moment, and then it becomes irrelevant. We can sometimes not even say anymore how we are feeling. We can sometimes not even judge it anymore. The feeling that was so dominant when we were dwelling on it has disappeared, and shows that it's a relative experience. It's not an absolute experience. So it's interesting, like when people ask you, how do you feel today? Like not talking about the emotional feeling, but simply about your state of health, for example. And it's very difficult to answer, because it's really, yeah, even if you've got a flu or so, if we go back to the present moment, and at that moment, not exactly sneezing, we got a moment to breathe in deep, and then we cannot actually say we're feeling unpleasant or so. This is like an experience that all meditators make. So that's why we very much stay in the present moment when we do our meditation sessions and our meditation exercises. So we have like rupang, vedana, feelings. Sanya is perceptions, or sometimes translated as memories, or the things that we have like stored up. For example, I would say one of the classic sanyas that I can come up with right now, which is a very modern one, is whether one feels male or female. This is like a perception about all the history that you have, and obviously also about the body, but like when we're sitting with a meditative mind, we cannot actually pin it down to what we are, like characteristics. It comes to being by this perception of, for example, a young man doing sports supports that perception of I'm strong, healthy, young man trying to do certain exercises and be successful with that. And this can become an identity that we hold on to. And then when we grow older and suddenly cannot do sports anymore, then we start to suffer because we are not who we think we are anymore. We've been keeping up a perception around things that is not quite in line with reality. Many times it's like a prejudice, you can say, sanya, like the idea of thinking about how can we find out what sanya is. It's like a prejudice. You see something as some entity, which it actually isn't really when you look at all the factors of it. For example, the curtains here, they've got a very nice color, but in this light, in the evening, they look rather boring, I would say. Whereas in the sun, in the morning, they look actually really beautiful. So what's the curtain itself? It becomes like something that we identify as such. And then this comparison or this capacity or this prejudice or this judgment, what it should be or what it is like, then makes us be out of sync with what actually it could be when we see them. And even the idea that it's a curtain and it needs to have a certain function, it takes a lot of brain work. We have to train our intelligence with a lot of data to understand that this is not just a piece of cloth, but it's a curtain. Machine learning, when they train these AI machines that have a hell of a time finding out what a curtain is, they have to have a lot of sanya implanted in the memory or in the database of a brain first before you can actually say work on these assumptions. And the assumptions, the problem is that the assumptions are not are usually stable assumptions. And if we were free from these, from locking in to these assumptions, then we would be actually very flexible and could be able to follow things as they arise and cease. But if we have our perceptions around them and we have the identity stored up in our mind of what it is or what it should be or what it is supposed to be, then we suddenly have this gap between reality and we have dukkha, basically. It's an interesting analogy of like the prejudice. Like when we think about social context, we don't perceive people as human beings with human rights, with intelligence, but we have got certain prejudices. Some people we label as this and that, as not very intelligent or as coming from a educated background, and we straight away say have expectations towards that. And then with these expectations, we end up feeling dukkha, because whatever we expect, it's not the full reality and it's not quite always the same. And so whatever we want things to be, then eventually we reap disappointment because there's this wanting them to see them in a certain way and they actually aren't that way. So again, then we train ourselves to not really dwell on these perceptions, maybe make a short note. Okay, this is my disposition. And then we go to something neutral, for example, the simple experience of sitting here without having any judgment, without having any comments about it, and not labeling it as such, but we just experience and try to experience things as for what they are, what they come to us in that moment of our life. So this is very, very difficult in terms of sanya, I believe, perceptions or like the stored up data that we use for comparing what we are and what we are experiencing are very subtle, many things. For example, I mentioned this example of a young boy in school doing sports or so. I always had the perception that I wasn't good in sports, and because that was taught to me, or maybe I was more in say kind of like a thinker, and so forth, until I discovered, actually, if I don't have this perception that I'm not good in sports, actually I am good in sports. I can do all kinds of things. Or many people have the same thing with mathematics. It's like really like a prejudice. You have got this perception about yourself, make an identity out of it. Oh, I can't do mathematics. And the mere thought about that like basically blocks the experience of being able to do this. So what if we were able to rise up to all the potential of every experience that we have by being free from those perceptions? And then we could actually feel very, very different, not disappointed and not anxious as well. So there wouldn't be dukkha. So sanya, saṅghārāma, proliferations, or like mental activities that are expressing a certain volition or a certain intention. And I like to say they're like fantasies, like say, for example, when we're meditating and we have all these kind of thoughts about what do I do next? And what do I do when the Dhamma talk is finished? And what will I eat tomorrow? And where will I travel on Sunday? These things, they're kind of endless stories. It's literally, we can pile up a lot of say bypassing the experience of the present moment and be completely caught up in all kinds of dramas even in our mind by not being aware that these things are actually changing all the time. Like when we think about what may be tomorrow, it's obvious that we cannot fully know, and we cannot even know exactly what we want to do or what we will do when we get up from the meditation cushion. So the wise person would just leave it beside and say, okay, I'm not going to go there, and this is not something that will happen to me. This is not something I want to engage in, and let it be. So that's also what we practice when we do our meditation practice, to be in the present moment and cut off the thought experiments, you could say. And the thought experiments also, they are informed by our craving, obviously. Sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's like desires, sometimes it's say things that we like want to gain. And so it's an expression of craving as well. Like when we think about things, it's a mental activity that actually produces all kinds of fantasies. So Saṅghārāma is a complex topic. So, and the last of the 5 aggregates that make up a human life is the viññāna, which is the awareness of, I would say, the sense data that we get. For example, the things that we can see, hear. For example, right now I hear some kind of loudspeaker outside, and this is like the consciousness that comes into my awareness. I register. Okay, there is the sound of the fans. There is the touch of the pillow. There is the sensory input that I get from what I see. For example, in front of me, I see a computer screen, and so it influences my being in that moment, what I receive through the senses. And the senses, obviously, they are limited. There's many times we can see actually how limited they are. If it's too dark, we can't actually see anything. This is a simile that Luang Por Liam talks about many times, that the eye in itself actually is quite an insufficient apparatus. It's not a perfect seeing thing, because like you turn off the light and it can't see anymore. And as scientists, some of us like maybe have done certain experiments. You always have to take into account the how detailed like actually the resolution of a certain device is. For example, there's certain levels that it can't detect anymore, or there's certain bandwidth which it won't have any reaction to. For example, we don't hear ultrasound, and we don't feel microwaves, and we don't feel radioactivity. We don't feel infrared. We don't have any sense organ for feeling infrared. So that's when sometimes looking at nature of the human body to take us as the center of the universe in that sense and give us ourselves the importance. It's very good to go back to thinking about what would my life be like if I was a dog or a bat. It's a famous thought experiments. I think from the time I was studying philosophy, like Thomas Nagel, what it's like to be a bat, and it's like just the relativity of like what people and beings can pick up. And the senses, when we practice meditation, we don't pay attention to what is happening at the senses. We go inwards. We don't go to the external interface. We don't go to the data that we get through the ears. We don't go through the data that we get through the sense of pressure or so, but we go to the experience in itself. And that's a very, very different dimension. It's a very different thing than counting or like measuring what is happening outside. So that's difficult to explain, but all of us are meditators. We may have had experiences where the sense data actually aren't really relevant. Similar to when talking about Vedana, feeling may not be, we may not be able to define it and just simply experience something in whatever way it is, but no idea of what it actually compares to. And this is a feeling of being independent of what is happening outside and turning inwards. And there's possibly various realms when we meditate and that we can access through gradually letting go of the external senses and be turning more inwards, because there, as we know in the Buddha's teachings, the heart or the mind is also considered a device for receiving things. So we can also see how what the world would look like if we don't give importance to the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and the mind, and we just simply experience. So what it actually means is the great discovery of our meditation. But what we know happens usually is that we invest a sense of, this is me. I've always done it like this. I've always been like this. This is mine. This is my, for example, my memory. This is my body. This is my feeling. This is my mindset right now. Like, and we attach this very strong sense of like, this is an entity. But it's noticeable, I believe, that when the Buddha talks about the sense of what, how is what people perceive as self, as atta, actually not self, he already deconstructs it in the very beginning of the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta when he talks about the 5 khandhas, the 5 components, the physical part, rupang, the feeling part, vedana, sanya, perception, sankhara, proliferations, and vijnana, sense consciousness. He basically already dismantles, takes the whole, say, at first approximation, negligent perception about this is me with my entire being, already breaks it down into the 5 different aspects. And then each aspect has got sub-aspects, sub-experiences that we can then gradually put aside and see in a detailed way that all these things are constantly changing. And if we hold on to them as being a certain way, then we'll be reaping disappointment, or we'll be not in line with the truth after no given time. Very, very quickly, have to assert a new assumption. So when the Buddha talks about in the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta about the Rupa Kanda, Rupang Anatta, that the Buddha, when the Buddha says that the body is not self, he says like, if it was a self, it wouldn't be subject to abadhaya, like to be. The word abadhaya means actually abadha means to be sick, wouldn't be deteriorating, and for a certain period, I was under the impression that like actually the word abadha doesn't make so much sense for the other khandas. This may well be the case, but it may also be that we have to refine the understanding what the word abadha means, like a sickness, like how can you be sick in your proliferations? But I just would like to add that like this is like many times the case that certain expressions that we have for describing a situation really make sense in one of the examples, and then when we expand them, it's by extrapolation, that in a similar way to the body feeling aging, sickness, and death, basically, then and us not being able to ascertain a certain stability there, then we can also extrapolate this for the other areas of the 5 khandas. For example, we can say, instead of like it's prone to sickness, we say it's prone to the deterioration. And because everything changes, the old state of feelings, the old state of perceptions is already deteriorated, has already changed. So the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta then continues with the dialogue about like if something is impermanent, can we say that it's actually something happy that we're happy with? No, we cannot, and we need to say it's actually dukkha. It's actually insatisfactory. It's changing. It's dukkha. We say dukkha, as we know from the Four Noble Truths from yesterday. There's the aspects of like dukkha as the in the sense that dukkha as a feeling of pain and displeasure. That's called the dukkha, the direct dukkha of pain and pleasure. And then we have the viparinama dukkha. It's like what is described in the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta. It's like the dukkha because of change. For example, like we want to be a strong person that can jump up instantly and not have an old body, but it's already changed. So we have dukkha, we have frustration, we have pain. And then the Saṅghārā dukkha is that the Buddha says, actually, in and of itself, anything, this is more on the level of, I would say, more abstract and philosophical, anything that is a conditioned phenomena is always dukkha. Anything that isn't whole in itself, isn't has many aspects to it and is constantly changing by nature, can never be what we call a perfect happy state. It's called this is called the Saṅghārā dukkha. All conditioned phenomena are let's say dukkha in that sense of unsatisfactory. Cannot pin them down. So these reflections are like my words and trying to describe them. You may have other aspects to it, and you may have like thoughts about it. And I think it's very allowable to approach these highly detailed aspects, also the detailed aspects of the definitions of the words in the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, to try to describe them with one's own words and gradually approach by revisiting the teachings and revisiting one's own experience to gradually come back to refining one's understanding of what these terms actually mean. And the process that indicates that we're actually going into the direction that the Buddha suggests is that we suddenly feel a sense of, let's say, bewilderment, or a sense of like, say, weariness about the factors that we first thought were stable, beautiful, strong, and lasting. And now we see that actually everything is in constant movement, and the feeling of like holding on to things will always be manifesting in many, many aspects. And we get this whole feeling of a big sigh saying, look, this experience of life in itself is already a very, very complicated, frustrating thing. We feel a realization of like disenchantment with the apparent wish that things should be beautiful and should be serving our purpose and should be the way we like them, should be the way we already defined them. And we get the feeling, okay, got to give up again. And actually this feeling then, which the Buddha said is called nibbida, that actually is a very positive feeling. It's not a feeling of despair. The despair is when we fall into the trap of seeing something as permanent when it's actually not permanent. Then we feel, ouch, that was a mistake. Ouch, we've kind of like missed something. We've like been disappointed. But if we see the whole process of, oh, in so many facets, things are always changing. And the mere act of, in all these minor details, constantly investing into a sense of wanting them to be a certain way and stating them as a certain entity and as a self in that sense. This is always causing me frustration everywhere. And this insight, and with a big sigh, it's a big project, because like even the 5 khandhas already are complex. Like everything in the universe is so complex, and there's a constant change. Then the feel of, okay, realize that this is not easy. This is not a single thing that we can just simply tick off and go on. But we get a feeling of like, say, okay, at least I've cracked the code a little bit, thinking, if I were to see everything that arises as simply arising, staying a while and then ceasing, maybe I'd get a glance of the peace in mind that we can sometimes already experience in small little things when we don't invest the sense of it should be like this, or this is how I want it, or this is myself. So then it actually becomes fascinating. You see, dismantle how the whole experience used to be enticing, to buy into it, to believe it, to state it, to label it, to want it. And then we see, oh, we can step back from it in bits and pieces, and then feel dispassion, feel a sense of nibbida and viraga. Viraga is a beautiful word, and it means that we don't invest into only the desirable parts of our experience, but we take the whole experience as it is. We take the experience without filtering it, without wanting some things and not wanting things. Why would it be so positive? Is because it feels peaceful. It feels like this is like something that we can experience without dukkha. And in small areas, we might be able to already feel how good it is when we don't buy into the sense of investing into, this is us, this is me, this is who I am, this is what I want, this is who I will be. But we say, never mind, whatever it is, I'm at peace with it, and go back to the experience of the present moment. So, and with viraga comes nirodha, and this is the ending of the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta. The 5 bhikkhus experience the cessation of dukkha, the cessation of the things that entice our whole sense of being and tempt us to see it as a stable thing, but actually we see the fleeting nature of things, and in every moment are completely at ease with it. And that means cessation of all the investment that causes us to suffer. That's Nirodha. And then the Buddha says, like those 5 disciples who have had this insight and were able to follow through the thought of not investing a sense of self into anything, they became fully enlightened as arahants. They finished their work in this Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, and they were attained to the same state of peace and the same liberated mind as the Buddha himself. So this is like a short tour around the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta. I'm sure there's much more that we can discover in that, and the aspects that I pointed out are my thoughts, and is in line with our whole approach, that we actually look at the scriptures from things that we feel are tangible for our practice. And I hope that there's something in it that you can dwell on. The summary would be, we don't identify ourselves as a stable thing. Even the minute experiences of like painful, unpainful feelings, we don't identify as such and dwell on them and want them, but we let them flow as they arise and as they cease. And this goes through all the 5 khandhas, all the major groups of identification or identification of a self that the Buddha singled out. And the mere fact that we can see this whole life as a, so to say, human being on earth, as composed of all these various sub-factors is already a gain, because understanding that the sense of self is actually has got this the characteristics of the 5 khandhas is also already quite a special insight. So the Buddha actually is not talking on the beginner's level when he already quotes the 5 khandhas, because many times, like we would approach the whole area of what is the I, what am I, and what is happening to the I, and in that very solid matter. If I were to talk to friends from my former lay life in Germany, they would probably already find that quite revolutionary to subdivide a sense of like identity into those 5 khandhas, and then to apply the idea that they're always changing, they're never still, and we cannot really pin them down. And it's like a very dynamic system of causes and conditions, and to basically be able to dive into this world of change without being stuck in it. That's a sense of peace. These are my words. So offer these 4 reflections, and hope that they can instruct our practice. Eva. tomorrow morning we also have our morning puja at 5:30 in live transmission, and welcome the Zoom group, the AVT Zoom group to join. I think in the morning we usually do Hindi these days. It's very much fun. So.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. Good night.